overall, Rinca was just kind of an eerie place. Several times along the trail, we saw blood splatters. I was hanging around Bali in 2009 and I decided I wanted to see a Komodo dragon. I booked a flight to Labuan Bajo, which is the jump-off point for Komodo National Park. And it was a short flight. There were maybe 20 of us on board, a small prop plane. And as we came down to land in strong winds, the pilot actually miscalculated and bounced the plane off the landing strip. And we came up a little bit and started listing to the right. And I actually watched out of my window as the wingtip came down 2 or 3 feet from the ground. And I braced myself because I was expecting us to pinwheel and break apart. And so the pilot managed to right the plane and stick the second landing. And so as we coasted to a stop, all the people who were on the left side of the plane who had seen nothing but sky through their windows, they were fine and getting their luggage down, and all of us on the right side of the plane who had seen the ground through the window, we were sat there paralyzed, right? And so Labuan Bajo in 2009, it wasn't nearly as touristed as it is today. In fact, in the 2 or 3 days I was there, I didn't see another traveler. And I checked into kind of a rough and tumble guest house, and on the very first day there, I came out to explore the town, and there was this giant fruit bat hanging from the eaves of my front porch. And I couldn't open the door because this bat was hanging there just looking at me, right? And we had this standoff for a few minutes, and I finally managed to harass it until it flew away. But I went down to the beach, and I negotiated with a boatman to take me to Rinca Island the following morning. And so I had heard from other travelers in Bali who had taken Komodo tours that they had only seen a bunch of fat, docile Komodo dragons hanging around the canteen area. And these dragons, they wait for handouts and garbage. And of course, if you're dumb enough to go over there and mess with them, they'll attack you. But otherwise, it's not that exciting. And the people who had gone to the field on Komodo Island didn't see a single dragon in the wild. And there's just too many tourists that were going there. And so that obviously wasn't the experience I was looking for. And so Rinca Island in 2009 was far less touristed. In fact, I was the only non-ranger, non-local that I saw on the island at the time. And so the next morning, I went down and I met this boatman on the beach. And he's making preparations and getting our small wooden boat ready. And I noticed there's no antenna, there's no radio, there's no lights, and no flotation devices. And mind you, Komodo National Park's famous for the bad currents, right? And so it's good for diving because it brings in plankton and that attracts sharks. But boats sometimes get pulled down and broken apart on these strong currents. And so I asked the boatman, does anything on your boat float? And he looked me in my eyes and he said, why? Are you afraid to die? And so I said, well, I don't prefer to die tomorrow, not here anyway. And he looked at me again and he said, just trust God. So I went with that, and we took his boat. He was at full throttle to stay above the current. And we pulled up on Rinca and took care of business with the rangers. And I was met by this 18-year-old kid who was going to be my guide. And he handed me a stick, and I said, what's this for? And he said, well, it's for the dragons, so you have something to poke. So already I knew it was going to be an adventure. And his stick had a fork in it, mine didn't. It was just a pole. And so we hit the trails, and we were the only two out there that I saw. And we're walking around, and Rinca Island was scorching hot, way hotter than Bali and Lombok. And I would not describe it as jungle. It was arid, grasslands, very hilly, with patches of woods and some tall palm trees. And we're walking around, and I'm starting to notice all these snake skins on the trail. And some of them are like 4, 5, 6 feet long. And I said, what's up with all the snake skins? And he said, well, those are cobras. So apparently Rinca Island was absolutely infested with cobra snakes. Fortunately, it's so hot that they don't move around much during the day. And in 2009, actually 2 locals on the island were attacked by Komodo dragons. One survived, one didn't, which is sad, but unusual for them to have a Komodo dragon attack, actually. And that said, the cobras are actually responsible for fatalities every year. They're just too far from medical help there. And so as we're walking, we come across this mound with a lot of holes in it. And he says, this is a Komodo dragon's nest. And he's explaining to me how a Komodo dragon will dig out all these scoop holes as like a decoy, so that when another dragon comes along to consume the eggs, which they do, it can't figure out which hole has the actual eggs in it. And so they snoop around, and that gives mama dragon time to come out and catch the invader, right? And as he's explaining this to me, I look down, and there are a bunch of large eggs in one of the holes. And I'm thinking, and I'm about to say something, and then we hear the bushes tear apart, and here comes mama dragon, right? And she's really ticked off and big. And so we're backing up, and he's using his stick, and I'm taking photos with my SLR, and we're both retreating. And we got back to what we thought was a safe distance. And my guide is starting to light a cigarette, and I noticed that his hand is shaking like this. So that was some indication that it was a closer encounter than he was used to. And then, just a minute or two later, the mama dragon had followed us down the trail. So she came down the trail, and we had to run a second time. And she stopped and stood up, posturing, showing us how big she was. And she was quite big. So we left the nest alone, obviously, and he took me to a watering hole because we knew in a place so hot that there would be some action there. And sure enough, there was a water buffalo cooling itself off, submerged in the water, right? And just over to the right was a Komodo dragon, a medium-sized one that was flattened on the rocks and stalking this water buffalo. And I don't think the buffalo knew it was there. So even though the buffalo is big and actually dangerous to the dragons, all they have to do is bite it once. And the reason a Komodo dragon is so dangerous is they have so many strains of bacteria in their mouths that their saliva is pink and red and foamy. And so all they have to do is bite one of these creatures once and then follow it. And they form these Komodo trains where a bunch of dragons will be following a big water buffalo around the island. And it may take days, but eventually the buffalo will fall over and they'll just attack it. But we watched as this dragon was concealing itself on a rock and watching this buffalo. And so we never saw one of the Komodo trains, but we did see piles of bones that still had hide on them, flies, so it was obviously a fresh kill. And overall, Rinca was just kind of an eerie place. Several times along the trail, we saw blood splatters, dried blood on rocks, and bones stuck up in different places, and snake skins. And so it was kind of a creepy place to be anyway. And after the water hole, we crossed a field of tall blonde grass, and it was about thigh-deep grass. And I really felt vulnerable there because you couldn't see that far in front of yourself. And as we're going, we started noticing, okay, there's a dragon over here. It's popped its head up. It would pop its head up, look around, stick its tongue out, and go back down. And then there was another one, and then another one, and then another one. And eventually we discovered that, these things are all around us. And so neither one of us felt safe. And so we got out of the tall grass without an incident and made our way back down to the dock in the evening. And at this point, I'm grimy, sweaty, covered with dust after a day in the field. And the sun's going down, the beach faced west. It was absolutely beautiful. And I decided I wanted to go for a swim. So I took my shirt off, jumped off the dock in the water, and I'm swimming. And I'm kind of in this moment of zen, right, after a long day in the field and mission accomplished, seeing all these dragons. I think we saw 8, 9, 10, I don't remember. And I look up, and there's this older Indonesian man standing above me, and he says, "Hadi hadi ada ular cobra di sini." And so I'd been in Indonesia about 2 months, and my Bahasa was okay. And I'm sitting there thinking about it. Hadi hadi means be careful. There are cobra snakes here. So I said, yeah, I know. I've seen the snake skins, and my guide, he told me all about the snakes. And so I finished my swim, and I got up on the dock, and not 30 seconds later, a 6-foot-long cobra comes swimming through the spot where I was just swimming, and then another and another. And so as the sun was going down, the snakes were coming out and being active. And so the boatman, just as a precaution, he pushed us off from the dock about 6 feet so we could still jump over and go ashore if need be, but we wanted a gap there so that creatures of the night actually couldn't crawl over onto the boat. And so we slept on the boat that night, just on the hard wooden benches, and I'm lying there, and mosquitoes are terrible. And I reached over and I got some oil that was all over the outboard motor, and I smeared it on my skin to keep the mosquitoes away. And the boatmen and the rangers were drinking and gambling and playing cards and arguing, and I'm lying there on my back, and I could see all these shooting stars and satellites, and I was just overwhelmed with this feeling of gratitude and bliss, just a feeling of mission accomplished, that I had earned an experience that I can share with you guys 11, 12 years later, but one that will be mine forever, right? And if I can give you any advice at all, it would be to go out there and get your experiences, because once you do, they're yours forever. You get to keep them, and nothing can change that. So thanks for listening.